Hey, everybody. Tonight is a celebration. Wednesday, once again, my favorite day of the week, where I get to host these brilliant conversations with brilliant people about the topics that impact the urban community. So my name is Tees, and I am the host of Woke Wednesday, which is an urban tea series that explores relevant topics of discussion that help us stay woke. That means to remain current or to get woke, to learn something new and to gain a new perspective on what's happening in our world, in our communities, in our personal lives in order to become
All right.
happy, and whole. So in this episode of Woke Wednesday, I am going to speak with panelists that will join us in a celebration of Juneteenth, an early celebration. So this is a special edition of Woke Wednesday. So the panelists today will reflect on the many contributions of Black people in the arts and their impact and influence on culture. We will explore the movements of the past that gave light to the way it was back then, and also to the way that the present day and the current, the future, how art is signifying the way that we see the world going forward. So I'm excited. I don't know about you guys, but I am truly excited, especially once you hear who we have with us tonight. I think you'll be super excited as well. So before we get started, I want to ask everyone to share, to start a watch party, be engaged, send your questions, comments, emojis, whatever you got, send them to me. We want to see it. And we want to make sure that we're sharing the information that you want to have. So definitely let us know when we're going through what you want to hear about as well.
Yeah.
Right. So we will jump right in here. Let's dive right in. We're going to start with introductions, and I think we're going to have Cjala go first.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and joining this conversation about something I'm very passionate about, which is the arts. Cjala Surratt. I am the currently the communications coordinator for Lightwork and Urban Video Project. Our mission there is to support emerging and underrepresented artists working in the field of photography and digital media. We have 2 gallery spaces. We're situated within the university. If you've driven through downtown and you've seen the projection on the back of the Everson, that is Urban Video Project. And the other things that I do in the community is I serve on the Race and Equity Task Force for the Everson Museum and the Members Committee. And I also sit on the board of the Community Folk Art Center, and you'll be hearing from their director shortly. She's amazing. I have the privilege of being one of the co-founders of the Black Artists Collective and the Black Leadership Coalition. That's what I do in the community.
Thank you so much. And that was a mouthful because you and I know we probably missed a couple of things, but
I know I'm looking at my list like, there's a few.
Yes. So thank you for sharing that, and equally thank you for your contributions to the community. So Tanisha, Dr. Tanisha, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Tanisha Jackson. I am the executive director of the Community Folk Arts Center, and I'm also a professor of practice in the Department of African American Studies here at Syracuse University. For those of you who don't know about the Community Folk Arts Center, it is the only African diasporic arts center in the city of Syracuse and surrounding areas. We are a proud unit of the Department of African American Studies, and we are going to usher in our 50th year in 2022. Woo! So yes, there's a lot of history contribution of this organization that developed out of the Black Power movement here in the city of Syracuse. And I've had the pleasure of working with both the other panelists here, Cjala being our board member, and then also Jaleel making major contributions and having exhibitions within our gallery. So CFAC has a visual arts gallery, a Black box theater for performing arts, a dance studio, 2 ceramic studios for wheelchair building, and within the arts, we celebrate artists who bring cultural expression, and then also dialogue to the community, and to really center on the things that are meaningful or that we are wanting to talk more about through cultural expression. So when I'm not running CFAC or teaching, I also serve on Interfaith Works as a board member. That takes, that has a big part of my attention in terms of my passion and me being invested in the community. And then also I am engaged in research and trying to create some of my own art. So yeah, that's just a little bit of me, about me and what I do.
Wonderful. So you said you're connected to Interfaith Works?
Mm-hmm. I'm one of the new board members there. And so, yes, and, helping to build and contribute, I should say, to their platform and the goals that they have within our community.
Very nice. We all have so many connections. As you're talking, I'm like, oh, oh, oh. So my company is actually sponsoring the upcoming event this month. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah, very nice.
It's such a small world,
It is.
especially here in Syracuse.
You
We're
talk-
so connected.
Yeah, you realize how you just family anyway. So yes. So Jaleel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, my name is Jaleel Campbell, and I am the founder of the Feel That Funk project. I'm the founder of the Collective Display Art Show and the newly Jaleel Campbell Studios located on the Near West Side. So I am an overall creative. I do so many different things, whether it's video work, doll work, music. I'm just dibbling and dabbling in everything right now. And I'm definitely a firm believer in community-based projects. Whatever I can do to engage the community I'm situated in, I'm gonna do it. And just coming up with interesting solutions to these everyday issues or just problems that we all endure, coming up with creative ways to bring some joy to the masses. That is my goal, and that is my vision for everything that I do.
That is so wonderful and so necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's so necessary to in common theme here. All of you are community-based people. All of you are making significant in the arts and arts aside, making significant contributions. So people after my own heart. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank
All
you.
right, so let's talk. Let's talk Black art. So what is the first word that comes to your mind? You only get one. Just one. Just one. So tell me the first word that comes to mind when I say Black art.
Me. I definitely,
Right.
yeah, me.
Okay, now I'll let you expand on that.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, just art has literally been a part of my being since I was little. One of my earliest memories is me like spray painting my parents' garage when I was like 3 years old. Granted, I got not beat up, but I got whooped for it. But it's just like you saw there was something there, and thankfully they let me pursue it. And from that, I was able to find my mission and vision.
Very nice. All right.
I think the first word, kind of thinking too about what Jaleel was talking about, is challenge. I like that Black art throughout its history has offered an opportunity for people to challenge the way that they perceive others, the way that they perceive community, the way that they show up. In speaking about one of my first experiences in art and seeing what it could do is an experience at Syracuse Stage when I was very young. And I don't remember the particular piece we were watching, but there was a shared experience of laughter. So people from all these different kind of backgrounds were having, in this darkened space and this kind of suspension of disbelief, right, entertainment, but we were experiencing something communally. And I think that art offers something unique that we're not going to have in the workplace, we're not going to have in the grocery store, but you're going to be presented with something that could potentially challenge you and ask you to push beyond the boundaries that you might have built up around yourself every day.
Awesome. So challenge. I like that. How about you, Tanisha?
And so for me, the first word that I think of is vision. And what I mean by that is that Black art and Black artists in particular is really where we get to see the vision of the past, the present, and the future of who we are as a people. And so from there, we have visibility. And all that has to do with us being seen, us being understood, and communicating our thoughts, our dreams, our passions, our goals, and through this vehicle of art.
Can I speak to something that Tanisha just said too? Because it also brings to mind, I know I'm only supposed to have one, but it brings to mind the word visibility really resonates, because I think so often when I think about the Black experience that art has been there as part of our emancipation. It's been part of our salvation. I mean, we sang our way to emancipation with the drinking gourd, right?
Right,
So I
right.
think that, you know, that visibility is so rooted in other aspects of our legacy here and survival. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Tanisha said there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in Black art, it feels very natural. It feels like there's a flow. It feels like it's something that is common to all of us in some way or another, whether we are deeply embedded in the arts or not. It's a piece of who we are and how we express ourselves, for sure.
Oh yeah, can I just say something about that? Because I definitely agree. And it's so funny because I'm just even thinking of growing up and seeing the Black art that I was surrounded by, going to my friends' houses and seeing how their mothers or parents had the same artwork. AJ Wright back in the day, they used to have like a real nice home decor section, and a lot of those images came from that section. But these shared experiences all help shape the way we view and see, you know, Black art. So just to bring it back to what I do, I'm trying to create that next generation of artwork that is going to be translated to all of these different households for their young people to see.
Very nice. Very nice.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this: what initially so each of you are in not not the same space, I will say, as far as art is concerned. There's kind of a different play from where you present, right? Where you stand in the space of art. But what initially got you excited and engaged in the field of art as you were growing up, or art history, and then, you know, pushed you into a career, because each of you have a career in art. So what was that initial thing? And I think, Jaleel, you talked about it a little bit, so maybe we'll just start with you and you can, you know, finish up on what that was like for you when you initially got started. But what was that for you that said, this is it?
Yeah, so that moment for me was when I was in elementary school. My brother, he was he is an artist as well, and he was actually featured by my elementary school. He used to come up with these intricate mazes, and they put it on the magazine of the school, like these monthly magazines that they would make, and it got distributed like to every student. So I was there for the prestige, you know, like I wanted to be seen. I wanted everybody to know my name the same way they knew his. And then that's when I started drawing heavily. And eventually 2 of the images that I ended up creating ended up on the school magazine like that. And so after that, I was hooked. And art, again, that was my favorite subject. It was my favorite subject in school. However, we always learned about the common artists. So Picasso, Matisse, there's a woman, I forgot her name, Elizabeth, the woman with Georgia O'Keeffe, that's who it is. And Frida Kahlo, you know, it wasn't until I got to college where I learned about all of these pivotal Black artists that were really out here killing it. And I felt an instant connection to their work. And being able to see that history and to build from it now has just been amazing. Seeing I definitely credit social media for have like just the way everybody has lifted me up, like in our community, to being known as the artist. They call me Jaleel the artist now. That's so funny to me. And so yeah, like it was always intentional to be this artist. However, I didn't have that vision so far clear to know that this could actually become a whole career for me.
Mm-hmm. If we get time, let's definitely double back to that and the perception of artists, starving artists, that a lot of people have. But let's definitely double back to that a little bit later. Remind me if you.
So sorry.
All right. So Tanisha, how about you?
Yeah, so I would say that at the core of who I am is I'm a creator. I'm an artist, and my early memory of engaging with art is probably age 4. And it's a situation where remember Pound Puppies?
Yes.
You know, like, okay. So I had this whole Pound Puppy, like comforter, like bedroom set, and I had a Pound Puppy. And I remember drawing, I had like, paper, pencil, being able to draw and connect my eye with my hand to replicate the Pound Puppies that were on my bedspread. And I was just, I was able to recognize how individual shapes, when put together, could, come together as a complete picture or a complete image or whatever, right? So the composition of like shapes, and I would say, you know what? I'm really good. Like I told myself, I'm really good at this. And was further, affirmed by, my parents, where I felt like it was something that I was naturally gifted at. And throughout my education, was in art club in high school, went to college, and I deviated from art in undergrad for a while because of the starving artist narrative, right? So I was, my goal was to be a neurosurgeon. I don't like lab though. I don't like, but so it's just, so I had this whole discovery of, what am I going to do? And at the same time, one thing I know is that when you have a gift or a calling, you can run from it, but it will not let you go. Right? It will not let you go. So, I fought my way through, and even though I didn't focus on the fine arts of it, sometimes I'm like, oh, I really should have got that, BFA or MFA. I've always been engaged in making art. It's been a part of my health. It's been a part of my wellness. And then I eventually found a profound interest in community-based arts, and also looking at art that focuses on our representation as a people, because I equally have a love for Black history and Black studies. So I ascribe myself as a Black studies scholar, as well as that focuses on African diaspora art, art that reflects who we are as a people. So merging those two interests is what I eventually did at the doctoral level through art education, and how you can use art as a vehicle to have conversations like this, to have people create, right? So that our ideas become tangible. And then from there, we're able to reflect, we're able to dream. And it was the perfect combination of who I am and my interests. But I'm forever that 4-year-old artist who gets to play, right? Rather directly when I'm making art, or when I'm, working with Jaleel or Cjala, and creating opportunities of creativity and seeing how that impacts our community.
Very nice. Very nice. And I can just feel and see the passion oozing through you. Sounds like a really sweet spot, combining the arts with Black studies as well. And then it was like, boom, I'm in there.
Yeah. It took a while, but for me to to figure out like, hey, how does this work? But it's been a beautiful journey.
Wonderful. How about you, Cjala?
Well, picking up on the word journey. So I had the gift and privilege of growing up in a home where the arts was always present. My mother is a classically trained opera singer. She went to Syracuse University. She's also a director. But my earliest memories are hearing my mother doing her scales in the house. Part of her training was that she would have to sing in Italian or German. And what she would have to do is that she would sing to my brother and I. And we would have to then say if we understood the story, because if she'd done her homework properly, she should be able to communicate. It should transcend language. So there was there were lessons there about communication, but also the realities are too is that we went to rehearsals with her, and we were generally the only brown people in those spaces. So she also was expressing there that we can live our dreams, we can show up in these spaces, even if the medium says it's only for a particular group of people, that we still should be present and we should be visible. So I'd say then too, I was very much immersed in some of the things that are no longer present here, unfortunately, like Metropolitan School for the Arts, which was located downtown, which was based on scholarship. So if you didn't have anything, you could come. If you had the means, you helped pay for those who didn't. And so in that school were people like Jackie Warren Moore and David McDonald and Vanessa Johnson. So there were a lot of different Black and brown artists who I had direct access to and could see and read through them the possibility of being a living, working, professional artist. And so I think that was a gift that I had early on. And now I think that my job is to give back and make space for others like myself who are looking for, can I indeed be an artist? Because as Tanisha said, and Jaleel alluded to as well, there's this notion that that it isn't really a viable profession. It's a nice hobby, but it's something you do on the side and get a quote real job. But issues of visibility, I eventually, I started out, actually, I went to Syracuse University. I got a scholarship to go to, I was straight drama, meaning I did not sing. I do not sing, though my mother can sing, I cannot. So, so upon graduating from Syracuse University, I did do a bit of traveling, and then ended up back here and ended up working on the other side of the arts, which is in the marketing and public relations end, which I love. Because what that really kind of melded was my ability to do what was done for me, which is amplify and bring visibility to, and particularly in areas of policy. Something that Tanisha said earlier is that CFAC is the only space in which Black and brown arts and culture is amplified. And in a city of this size, that's egregious, that there are so many outstanding artists here, and there should be multiple spaces in which people can connect with them on the north, south, southwest, and downtown. So a lot of my time is taken at looking at how do we make that possible and how do we amplify these really amazing artists that we have here. But yeah, that's kind of my journey in the arts. Once in a while, people coax me back onto the stage, but generally I'm behind the scenes.
See, you shouldn't have said that, because now I have to have a whole other conversation.
And I saw you taking a note on that.
Oh, I should say too, to that point, is that we had things like AXO, and that was actually a really pivotal moment. So NAACP had an AXO program in which, there were various, different things that you could go and compete for, and poetry and art and dance was one of them. But what was wonderful is they also, you had a mentor that followed you through the process, and then you got to go to nationals. And never in my experience had I been in like a hotel that was filled with young people who looked like me, who were studying all these amazing things. And then they brought in people like Spike Lee, and they brought in Jada Pinkett, and they brought in John Singleton to then judge and decide, who went on to these other kinds of awards and things like that. But to also be there with someone who was studying micro technology and things like that. So again, having these spaces in which Black and brown youths and adults eventually can express themselves and know that they can be seen and visible is really something that I'm passionate about.
One common theme that I'm picking up here is that each of you discovered, whether you ran away from it initially or not, but you had sort of this inkling of art, of this passion early. And we got some things to get through on the conversation of Black art, but we'll definitely maybe explore a little bit about how do we get children engaged? How do we bring out their artistic talents and potentially passion to discover art in a new and fresh and exciting kind of way? So, all right, cool. So now that I understand like where you came from, how you got into this, I want to understand your perspective on the current state of Black art. Do you believe that Black art is more or less mainstream, and celebrated and appreciated than prior decades? And why? Either way, anyone who wants to jump in on the question, please feel free.
I think,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Julie.
Well, I was just gonna say, I really think Black art has become extremely accessible now, thanks to social media. Just being online, if you follow in the right pages, you know, you can have access to some of the dopest Black artists that are out there. And just being on Instagram and coming across all these different contemporary artists that are working in either oil or digital, seeing the way they are pushing the envelope is so inspiring to me, you know. And it's just that refresher that you might need to get your stuff back out there, you know, because like for me, because I'm working on a music project right now, so I've taken some time off from making dolls and my visual work. However, I'm still, you know, saving some images and stuff because I'm using all of this as an inspiration for when I do decide to create my new body of work. And like literally just yesterday, and then again, like a lot of opportunities come from having a social media presence as well. You know, there are companies and stuff that are looking for fresh faces, for fresh Black perspectives to highlight. And so I really think that it's important that if you're starting out as a young artist, to make sure that your social media presence is consistent and clean.
Okay. I got something to say to Jaleel. No, it's I totally agree. I think that social media has democratized accessibility in regards to art, but in the areas in why I work, which is more so in fine arts, I still think there's a pressing conversation that needs to happen. I think there's been a huge influx, and I think unfortunately I'll use the word tokenizing of amazing artists, but I feel like it's a trend. And I also, my concern is that in the spaces in which people who are valuing the work, people who are making assessments of work, the curators, the executive directors, that these larger institutions still are rather impenetrable. I think they're beginning to have these conversations about that they are PWIs, that they are gatekeepers, that they serve the palate of generally white patrons. And they are trying to now do things to change that in terms of the work that they're deaccessioning, the work that they're acquiring. But I still think there's a long way to go in having more Black and brown curators and people in positions of authority making decisions about what is going into the archive and what is going up on the walls. And of course, then the valuation of work. So I think that we've taken some steps forward, but I think that we still have a long way to go. And I also think that the acquisition of work does not a DEI mandate make. I think, unfortunately, that my position is that we have danced, we have sang, we have written works, we have written poetry for eons for people. But the realities are still that in terms of actual power, we still have a long way to go. There are people who are unwilling to relinquish power. They're willing to allow us to entertain them, but in terms of actually having access to power to make choices about what's purchased, what's bought, and where it goes, we still have a ways to go.
Yeah. So to add to that, what I like about, you know, both of the responses from my fellow panelists is that we have to address two things. One, that we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to mainstream museums and galleries and the representation of Black artists. Black artists represent 1%. 1% is the lowest of any other race when it comes to the acquisition of our work and the spaces that we're allowed to be exhibited in and to have conversations. And so when you think about, you know, what that means and how we represent, I don't know if we're 12, 14% of the population, but the fact that we as a community, and I know I'm generalizing, are probably the most influential when it comes to culture in general, I think speaks volumes. At the same time, I think it's very much important to recognize how through self-determination and ingenuity, we're able to create spaces for ourselves as artists, as creatives on social media, in spaces like pop-ups, where, and this has always been the history when it comes to Black art, particularly in America, where we create pathways for ourselves, or we create our own institutions. So historical Black colleges are one of the first to patron Black artists in a very through institutionals, right, in an institutional way. And when mainstream America wasn't really paying attention or buying our work before it became popular or hot. And to Shayla's point, right now, it feels like we're in a Black renaissance, but it's on trend, right? It's the trend now. It's, it in many ways tokenizes us, our artists. And so you want to be careful not to feel like we have changed because we're on trend and because it's popular, because until we're able to affect or have an impact in policy and administration, and our work is valued equally, in comparison to mainstream artists and other artists of different cultures and groups, but particularly white artists, then we still have a lot of work, or they still have a lot of work to do, I should say, when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the arts. Mm-hmm. But we have to recognize how we create our own spaces. And Jaleel, I think it's so wonderful to see you in action, because you demonstrate that all the time within this community.
But I mean, I think that's also too what you were speaking to, is that there's a legacy of us not waiting, right? That's part of the fibers of we are not going to wait for someone to emancipate us. We're going to do it ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right? And you're absolutely right. I mean, to watch Jaleel build up his studio space, and then also the legacy of where you sit, Tanisha, is that, CFAC started on the South Side out of a storefront, right? In our own community, we recognized a need and we built it there. We didn't wait for someone to come from a larger institution to give it to us. We knew that there were resources and artisans in the community, and we put it there. And the legacy lives on, of course, now through you.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure.
Can you tell I'm a board member? I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting, but that's part of the reason why I said mainstream and tried to draw that out a little bit, because I think in different spaces you might feel differently. Right. So social media, like Jaleel said, like if you're in the right space, we're celebrating. We are doing it. We are present. We are visible. We are buying up our own stuff. Like we're doing it. But then, when you go into other spaces, that doesn't carry over in the same kinds of ways. And to your points, there's more to do in those areas. But speaking of that, and I'm going to jump to another question that I have based on that, because I want to know who the players really are. Like, who are the players that are shaping how we view Black art, and how are these institutions shaping that experience of Black art, and what is our role in either changing that or consuming what we want to consume? Like, how do we help there?
Well, I think the first thing is what you're doing this evening, right? Is illuminating Black and Brown people who are working in their communities in the arts, and asking them to show up. I mean, and show up doesn't mean, I know oftentimes in the arts, it's perceived as very elitist, and the showing up has to do with funds, right? I'm also talking about just literally physically showing up and asking an artist about their practice and what they do, and being excited about it and telling others. For those who have the means, that showing up does mean buying our works. I think, you talked about early experiences with art, and I think about, and maybe it's taboo to talk about now, but the Cosby Show and things like that. But they were part of the tableau of those homes, were these works on the walls. And I think, making sure that we're buying works from Black and Brown artisans and collecting them and being archivists of our own history is very, very important as well.
So is it the curators of the museums? It's the board members of the museums. Are these the stakeholders, if you will, or the people that are in the positions of power that are shaping, you know, how we view art and what actually we even get to see in these spaces?
So yes, absolutely. When it comes to, you know, first the acquisition of art, you know, who decides what artist's work gets purchased, what gets exhibited is very much at an arts administrative level. So when you're thinking about the directors and the curators of museums, and even it's interesting that you said, you mentioned the board. A lot of people don't think about the board who really holds the power when it comes to these institutions, these larger institutions like museums. And so you're seeing controversy like in Indiana where, you know, and I can't think of the museum, but there's been issues with their diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how it was discovered that the board had a certain opinion about, you know, what type of diversity gets represented in a very surface way. And I'm just, you know, in a very general way talking about this, but the board holds power. Sometimes depending on the institution, boards can be connected to government dollars. And then depending on you know, how conservative, you know, the governance is within a city, state, you know, that determines who gets a seat at the table. When you talk about curators, it's really interesting because curators are responsible for displaying art in ways to tell a particular story, and how they position or display objects or, you know, artwork. If they are not sensitive, if they don't have the cultural knowledge to really display work in a culturally responsible way, then that's when it becomes problematic. And so they hold the responsibility of making sure that that the work that we see has, I would say, good representation, or, you know, historically is connected in ways that it needs to be. And it's really interesting because when we even think about the collections of, for example, museums, museums, just like universities, just like other corporations, sometimes has funky history. How they acquisition.
Way to put it.
Listen, go to a museum that's got artifacts from, you know, different groups, Black and brown people, and ask how did they acquire these works, right?
Yeah.
Did they purchase them, right? Have they paid the, you know, depending how long ago, were these artists paid for their works? And so there's an artist who in the 1990s, Fred Wilson, had this whole thing called Mining the Museum, where he would go and visit museums and dig in the crates, and he would unearth, right, or really, you know, their history, how they had these collections of either artwork or artifacts, sometimes during like colonial slavery or antebellum, and he would display them, you know, as part of an exhibit to really air out the dirty business of that institution. And so what it does is, for me, when I first encountered his work and I was early in my career, it made me aware of, you know, how, depending on who was in power, you know, what work not only got collected, but also the stories behind it, and then also the inequality that's connected to, you know, some of the artwork that gets displayed, that gets collected, and is even hidden in plain view. Mm-hmm. So I know that's a long answer, but definitely at an institutional level, there's a lot of decision making about what we see, and then that impacts what we consume.
And I know Jaleel was going to go next, but I wanted to say it makes me think about we had an artist on view at Lightwork, Wendy Red Star, an Indigenous artist, and her entree into photography was her experience of going to museums, particularly natural history museums, and seeing amongst the animals on display, the woolly mammoths, were mannequins, and dioramas of Indigenous peoples, like they were extinct.
Yep.
So I think it's that when we're talking about, the narrative that can be crafted, or the misinformation then that is then put out into the world, it's very problematic, because that then can ultimately down the road end up crafting, being a part of some kind of policy that then impacts a community. And absolutely, the whole thing you were saying, Tanisha, made me think of a Wakanda moment, right? When he's in the museum and looking at that work and saying, how did you acquire that?
Yes.
And there have been conversations. I know there was one with, I believe it was Ethiopia, in which there were works that a particular museum have, I believe in England. And they said, well, we can give it to you on loan. And they were like, no, these are our artifacts that represent our community. We don't want to borrow them, we want them back. But yeah, absolutely. I think the crafting of the narrative and the acquisition, there are definitely power in both of those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing too that happens when art is showcased in a certain way, it also gives us a perception of the value.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't see it, what are you thinking about the value of Black art? If it's how it's placed, where is it? Is it in a corner and not really taken care of and regarded as something that's special? So all of these things kind of play into each other on perception, even of value.
And the valuation of the artists themselves too.
Right.
Because as you said earlier in our conversation, a lot of our works are visceral, they're natural, right? So we have people who wouldn't use the word artist because it's part of their cultural practice. But because they didn't come through PWI or come through fine art kind of conduits, there are people who then would say that that is not fine art. And therefore, naturally, it shouldn't have the same valuation as someone coming out of Yale or Harvard or something like that, or coming out of these institutions that someone has ascribed to them a certain kind of level of power and prestige.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or even where they end up, right? So I heard, capitalism, I heard consumerism. Is Black art profitable?
Right now, yeah.
Right now. We're saying, I think we all agree we want to see more Black art in museums, and we want to see more representation. Is it profitable? Like what?
How much did that Basquiat sell for? I mean, definitely. But that's the tricky thing too, right? Is that, and I struggle with this as a person who would like to collect works by Black and Brown people, is that I champion the artist. I want them to get the value, but there's been a movement among some artists to say to museums, if you want my work, you must take the whole collection. Right? So you can't buy just the one work. You have to buy all of it, which naturally raises the value. And also you're in a larger institution because someone has to be able to either archive or put on view all of that work. So it's a very savvy move, but it then pushes out maybe your people who are newer collectors. So there is definitely value in Black art right now. Absolutely.
I just wondered.
I've tried to buy one of Jaleel's larger pieces. I have to save. It's like a layaway.
Right. Well, I asked the question because I'm wondering, is there still question about whether or not it's valuable to put this art there? Is there something else going on?
No. There is. So the arts in general is very lucrative, and one of the reasons why it could be very classist. And there's a divide, right? When it comes to people who even engage the arts, because in a very hierarchical way, it's always been something, particularly in Western society, where the affluent, right, are engaged in the arts, can afford the arts, patron the museums, those sorts of things. And so when we think about Black art, which is not necessarily valued as highly as mainstream artists. And right now things have changed. We're talking about this trend, right? But historically has not been the case. It's really interesting because I would say that depending on the time, depending on the artist, it changes. There is an anointing that some Black artists get. So we're talking about, Basquiat, well, and which, and I don't particularly, his work doesn't speak to me. So is it the most expensive piece of American art acquisition?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and you talk art, Kerry James Marshall.
Yeah.
And so, millions of dollars, but they've been anointed to say, hey, your art is worth this, much. And so it wasn't necessarily, it may not have started that way. So when people ask me, for example, well, I want to buy art, and particularly Black art, how do I start? What do I do? First, buy the art that you like. And two, get these young artists or these emerging artists now, because when they blow up like Jaleel, right? So, get the dolls, get the prints now, because in the future, it may be out of your price range. And so you want to start looking at artists. One, I always say, buy what you like, right? And then from there, don't just look at, who's on trend, who's popular, but look at some of these emerging artists, because once they get, I'm using the word anointed, right? But once they get, they are chosen, then they become, not as obtainable for like a space like CFAC. There are artists that I would love to, whose work I would love to acquisition, right? I'd love to buy, but Black artists, in particular, but they have now, they have crossed over, if you will, right? Are gone mainstream. And that's wonderful for that artist. We champion that, we celebrate that. That's what an artist, you want for an artist. But there was a time when someone wasn't looking at that artist, and maybe individual collector or Black institutions were. And really, we set the value of that work early when no one is noticing them or paying attention to them. And then every once in a while, you get an Amy Sherald, whose portrait of Michelle Obama is now in the National Portrait Museum or whatever they call.
And this happened with oh my goodness, Theodore. What's his name? It's two names now. I can't think of it. But there's a young man whose work I kind of was watching and following, and I began to collect his prints. And all of a sudden, the valuation of his work went up, and I didn't know why. I wish I could remember what his name is. But I found out it's because, what was the name of the poet laureate who spoke at the inauguration? Amanda.
Yeah.
He took a portrait of her that ended up in the New York Times. So it's like, it's, and I think when people are like, well, what should I collect? My rule is it resonates with me and I like it, because if that person does not take off, it still has to live on my wall.
Right.
So that is my general rule. But absolutely what Tanisha is saying, there have been, because I work within an institution that directly is supporting emerging artists, I've watched artists who have left our space and gone on to the Zanelli Maholi got the Chevalier de France, which is like an anointing, in France. We have so many different, we have Guggenheim recipients and MacArthur recipients. And I sit there thinking, oh, I could have bought that print for $300 and now.
It's happened so many times. And I'm just curious to hear from you, Jaleel, because I think you defy, I'm not to take, I know you're answering the questions, Leticia, but I think you really defy this narrative of like the starving artist in ways that I think what you do is amplify the entrepreneurial aspect of art, where you can determine your own price, right?
Right. And that's the thing, like I try to meet people where they're at for the most part. I'll never forget being so stressed out when I made the transition from selling my smaller prints from $20 to $30. I was like, I don't think people are gonna wanna buy them anymore. I just don't know if they're still gonna sell, but people still purchase them, and it literally caused me so much anxiety. Like, oh, I don't want people to think they're too expensive and all of this stuff. It's people are going to pay for what you want them to pay. if they love that work enough, you know. And I've gotten, you know, there has been moments where I've gotten complaints where, oh, your work is too expensive and stuff. I literally try to accommodate most people. So in this moment, especially with my canvas pieces, those prices have gone up because they are, for the most part, one of ones. And I'm working so hard right now to make sure that those pieces are going to be like worth money in the future, you know. So it really is an investment. And yeah, like it's just, I definitely believe that that value in terms of an artist, you know, setting that is vital. And once you get, again, once your name is known and stuff, you have that right to hike those prices up. Because you have to eat. Like, I'm sorry, I will never starve.
Yeah, and then your time is valuable too. Your time, your talent.
Right.
We can't do it.
Right, right. Okay. And that's the thing. Like, so in, for example, the Jaleel dolls, like a lot of people want the Jaleel dolls. They are coming back. I had to take like 6 or 7 months off because my hands was hurting. Like I was literally making them for 2.5 years straight. And it's so taxing on me. And like I keep getting emails and comments and stuff on Facebook or in Instagram, like, when are they coming back? When are they coming back? It's like, I love that that demand is there. You just got to bear with me because I'm still a human. I'm not a machine. And it's just, it really just brings it back to why they are priced the way they are, because they take time and a lot of care goes into creating them.
Yeah, and I would say the price is going up.
And the price is going up, right?
You come back.
Yeah.
Right, right.
And I mean, I just, you know, what I enjoy about Jaleel's work, and you know, as an extension of this larger conversation about Black and Brown artists, is that in the photography world, we talk a lot about reading an image. And I enjoy when I went to go see his solo exhibition, Homecoming,
yep,
at the Everson, that I could read so many familiar moments in the work, right? So many things with my family, so many things with my siblings. And there's a certain joy to that. That it's, of course, I can look at other works and I can enjoy the artistry and the technique, but when sometimes there's a reading of the work that you feel connected. And I think that that's what's really lovely about Jaleel's work. And when I see works by Black and Brown artists, there's an understanding. I think one of the most powerful works that I saw was a woman named Dion Lee. And she had, her show is called Of Rope and String. And she hand wove a rope. She's a survivalist. But a lot of her work has to do with that for Black and Brown people, nature is a place of trauma and a place of transcendence. And that this rope, when read by a Black person, has a utilitarian value, but also we know that people hung from trees. Right. So it's that reading that I think is special when it comes to Black and Brown artists, and also the person who is viewing the work.
Absolutely, that's beautiful.
Yeah, while you're on that topic, I'm interested in this too, and I think it all kind of plays into the perception of value. But what is your perspective of the standard art critics' appreciation of Black art in all of its intricacies, in all of its complexities, and are they really adequately able to critique in its full interpretation of Black art?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So for instance, like when I had my show at the at CFAC 2-3 years ago in 2018, the Syracuse New Times, they did a story on it. They literally got everything about the show completely wrong. They mistook 2 of the women in one of my pictures as men. The way they described these images was so remedial. It didn't make no sense. I called them, cussing them out, like, why did y'all not reach out to me? Yeah. I'm here. Like, y'all literally we could have had a conversation out. I could have cleared all of this up, and it wasn't a big deal to them. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, we just needed a story pretty much. So when Homecoming went up and Syracuse.com reached out to me, you know, I'll be real iffy with Syracuse.com because the way they be treating Black people, I don't like that. So I already have some reservations, but I made sure that the reporter, I'm like, no, so what you about to write? like I have to clear it first, because it's just like, you're not about to just write anything about my work. Like there's a very intentional point that I'm trying to get across. I need to make sure you're not gonna play with that at all.
Right. That's so critically important. That's kind of why, you know, the question came up, because I'm not sure that everyone can really understand the depth
No.
of Black art, you know, and if you can't understand it, how can you see the value in it? And then if we have the wrong people, you know, critiquing this art, then the value is not demonstrated in a way that you know, people are excited to view it. You are excited to consume it. People are excited to have it and be a part of that experience. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts about that, either Shayla or
Yeah, absolutely. I think what your question brings to my mind is the fact that we need more of our voices when it comes to writing about Black art. We need more representation in those areas. We need more people to critique Black art, to write, you know, whether it's in newspapers or columns, to do the research, to write books on and articles on artists. And you know, and to me, that's a meaningful space to be in, because that's so much of the work that I do as a scholar. So Jaleel and I actually were in conversation, and I have an article of that conversation that was published last year, end of last year. And he's one of many artists that I interview and I write. And that's just at the academic level. But when it comes to the masses, when it comes to, you know, really providing a voice, we need more people to pick up the mantle when it comes to writing about artists within our community, so that because they do get it, because they are willing to have the, you know, conversations around the arts that don't come with bias, right? Whether it be, you know, racial bias and everything else in between. And so this is really an issue of representation, because you can't really control how somebody's going to receive the art, right? How, especially if they're with outside of your community. Or so that's something that's out of our control. You only hope, right, that they get it right. But from there, what we can control is creating our own vehicles of communication to counter those narratives. And that's where we are empowered. The power of the pen, when we pick it up to write about our artists, that's when, and let me say this, it's important that we have a role in writing about artists, because the more an artist gets exposed when it comes to, you know, news publications in particular, that increases the value of their art. The more exposure that they get when it comes to coverage and notoriety, it's so meaningful for artists. I work with a lot of artists because of my role in CFAC, and I can't tell you the excitement that I hear or that they express when their exhibition gets covered in the New York Times, or when their exhibition gets covered in Daily Orange or wherever, right? And because that is just one more, media outlet, one more opportunity for their work to be exposed and for people to know them. It increases their people who may become collectors, and as well as, so patrons, and it's all connected. And so I would advocate that if anyone has an interest in the arts, maybe you're not an artist, but you have an interest in the arts and you love to write, then that's a way in which you can engage this space, this area that the Black arts, what we're talking about today. And you can help support artists in that way. And Shayla's a wonderful example. She's really, really good. Like really, really good when it comes to really supporting artists through marketing, through writing, through public relations. I would say she's the go-to. Sorry.
No, well, it's interesting because I think I wrote the word intentional down.
Yeah.
Is that whenever a project is presented to me, I try to make sure that I'm intentional about respecting the vision of the artist and the community they're trying to amplify. Because I don't sit in all spaces. I don't know all things. And I have to be respectful and make sure that I'm doing a proper job. What also came to mind is an artist named Yolanda Bonnell, who was a playwright and a performer. And she actually had a show in 2019 in which she explicitly said she did not want any white critics to write about her show. Mm-hmm. That she said, you are not equipped. You do not have a proper understanding to be able to share out what I'm trying to evoke in the play. And then it ultimately made the news and had a larger conversation about what would make someone equipped. And I think it goes back to larger systems, right? And I would then look at the institutions from which these writers are graduating from. And if Indigenous art, works from the African diaspora, be it, visual, performing, and writing, if those are supplemental and not part of the core curriculum of your fine arts study, mm-hmm. So when you graduate, you don't have a vast thing to draw from, you don't have a catalog to draw from when you're looking at work, then you're going to be unsuccessful and you're going to fail the work that you're trying to write about. And the other thing too is that I'm going to read this to you. Black Americans can never have impartial portraits at the hands of white artists. Mm-hmm. Anyone know who said that? That was Frederick Douglass. So this conversation has been going on for quite a long time. And he was very much a person who believed in photography. He felt that, that the lifting of a mechanical instrument would have more truth and could offer more dignity and humanity than handing over a paintbrush to someone who did not see the Black community as human. Yeah. So I think that we have a very long way to go. I do not think it's impossible. I've seen people who are not of the diaspora write, but they've done the work. It is evident in how they write that they've studied, they've shown up in spaces, they've asked the questions. So it isn't an impossible task, but it's one that people have to be intentional about. And also, again, be okay in being challenged. I find people who come out of academia, sometimes there's an elitism and there's a resistance to being told that you might be incorrect.
Yeah, when you were talking, I was thinking about the artist who exhibited last fall, Fabiola Jean-Louis, who she had an exhibit at Lightwork and not Lightwork, I'm sorry, Point of Contact. And her work deals with Black women in period dresses, like Baroque or Renaissance dresses, and she takes photos of them. She has sculptures of these dresses. And so it's interesting because me and 3 other Black women were approached to write articles or essays, I should say, for the catalog, because the caveat to exhibiting her work is that only Black women can write about her work. And I think that's very clear. She's very clear, right, about the politics and her representation, and the fact that I would say it takes I would even say a spiritual connection almost, when it comes to dealing with work of the diaspora and how some things can be misconstrued or just, devalued because, again, of your own cultural bias and are just blatant racism. Mm-hmm. And so to be an artist out here in the world where your first goal is to make money, or maybe it's not your first goal, but it's one of the primary, right? Maybe it's the creating itself. And then out of that, that's how you make your living. You have to be, you have this, awareness of how people may attack your work or have misunderstand it. And Jaleel, described, his experience, but to come at it from a point of view of having politics, not every artist has, I think, the guts to say and to do that. But it puts institutions on notice. Mm-hmm. If you want to show my work, and you're going to write about it or have a catalog and even sell this catalog, then I want these voices to be amplified to speak to the work.
Mhm.
And so maybe you don't go about it that way, but being clear about your politics as a creative
Mhm.
and how your work goes out and engages is something that we can do to try to, mitigate, really, stop the madness.
Well, Tanisha, not Tanisha, but Leticia, you were talking earlier about how do we leverage, and it made me think of social capital, because what you were talking about, Tanisha, makes me think of social capital.
Sure.
And in the last 2 years, a lot of firsts, in terms of like our magazines like Vogue and things like that have had their first Black photographers. And that's because the subject said, Beyonce, I think Rihanna have said, you will not be photographed. I will not be on your cover unless you have a Black photographer.
Yes.
So it's using that social capital and power once you are at the table to welcome some people through.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's so important, right? It's so important. And that's why, it's said that it's still a question, but it is a question. It's something that has to be considered.
Mhm.
Right. So you won't believe this, but we have like 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
I know. Isn't it crazy how the time just flies by when you're having so
Yeah.
much fun on a Wednesday?
Absolutely.
Wednesday evening. I did get a question from the audience that I want to read. I want to make sure that we get this question answered. So the question is, how do you promote your creative events, activities, etc., to the community other than posting on social media?
Well, I can say, I mean, because it's part and parcel of my job. So so essentially I do micro targeting. So what I will do is I'll take an event and like for Jaleel's show, I know Jaleel's part of a larger community, right? So I'll first say, I know what high school he went to, reach out to those people, so I kind of look at center the voice of the artist and then reach out from there. Also, I'll say right now, we have an artist that's coming in. His work deals with Clifford Prince King. His work deals with the LGBTQ community, particularly the Black gay male community. And so immediately my job is to then reach out to Sage, Black Q Syracuse, Jose Castillo on campus with the Resource Center. Where is that community centered? And make sure that they have the materials, not just to say, come to my thing, but how do I make sure that I'm effectively communicating, accurately communicating out about this thing that I'm asking you to come to. Making sure materials are out, and distributed into the community. It'll be interesting to see as our world opens back up again, putting things on walls and putting things in, materials in coffee shops used to be a thing. We'll see if that continues to be as we open back up again. Social media absolutely is a way. And then the question you just posed, unfortunately, in the last year, we've seen a major erosion of local media outlets. The Syracuse New Times is no longer around. There's much smaller distribution of other local papers. So we have deferred a lot to social media. And then not just that, good old showing up in spaces and saying, this is what I'm doing. I'm passionate about it. Would you like to come? Because I think too that I know from my experience that oftentimes I was the only one. I was asked if I could put the coat, can I give you my coat? No, I'm here to see the play.
Wow.
I mean, there's been multiple experiences which I've been confused as the person who's helping with catering. So I think showing up in spaces, bringing a friend with you, is another way in which you can spread the word about the things that are happening in a community.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Another one here. What, if any, are the personal or ideological connections that you make between arts, culture, community-based care, and overall Black health and healing?
Oh, I definitely would like to talk about this. So a big focus of my work is on Black women artists and wellness. And it's a current research project of mine. I firmly believe that when artists create, and I'm focusing specifically on Black women artists, but when artists create, it is actually a form of wellness first for themselves that then becomes or has the potential to be a vehicle of wellness for their respective communities. And what I mean by that is that through the creating process, right, it's doing something for you as an artist. There's a reason why you're picking up that pen, that brush, that needle, that camera, whatever your medium is. And it is there that you're able to have, balance, restoration, whatever it is, even association, but I'll table the association because that just means gathering. So that when the artist is creating, they're connecting sometimes with cultures. They're connecting sometimes it has nothing to do with culture. I think oftentimes we think of Black art and we think there's a lot of cultural and historical things going on. Sometimes it's just formalism. It's just beautiful flowers. It's just beautiful, I know birds. And if the Black person created it, that's Black art. I want to get that out there, right? But with that being said, that process of creating, I believe, is a form of healing and wellness for the artist in and of itself. When that artist either engages the community or community people or members engage with the art, that becomes an opportunity or space for wellness as well. So the association of people gathering to view the art, it facilitates conversations, critical thought, all of that, a place of a space for reflection. If we're dealing with certain issues, maybe it's a social justice piece of artwork. Maybe it's something that's talking about the current issues of the politics that we've gone through, the political landscape or COVID-19. By connecting with that art, we are able to have conversations that we may not necessarily, go out of the way to have. And that facilitates or ushers in forms of wellness and healing because we're able to connect around this particular object, right? Or culture or creative expression. And so I think it's so important. And one good example for us, although we're talking about visual art, I think one great example for us during COVID would be DJ, what's his name, who on Instagram. Say it again.
I know who you're talking about. He had the parties. He was having the.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, DJ D Nice.
Yeah, D Nice. Thank you. I can't. His name escaped me for a second. When we were all on lockdown, right, and stir crazy and isolated, we were able to come together as a global community, right, through the vehicle of music, through the vehicle of that particular medium, right, of the arts. And it was a sense of healing for us. And it created community because now you're on social media talking about, memories, whatever's connected to the songs that you were listening to. That's an example of how art facilitates wellness and healing. Same thing with Debbie Allen, who offered free dance classes during COVID. Even now with Versus, how we're able to come together through that particular medium and just really have a great time and connect with people we don't even know we're connecting with, right? And build community. And so I can say so much about it, but I think it is very much connected to our wellness and really it brings us back to our humanity when it's tested, right? So that the arts reminds us of our humanity.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, we are essentially out of time. I do want to be cognizant of your time that you spend here with me, but we can't have a Black art talk without showing some Black art. So what we're gonna do next, I believe we only really have time because again, I'm good, but I want to make sure that I stay at least kind of true to the time frame I mentioned as a part of this. So why don't we show one piece of art and we have that per individual introduce the art to us and tell us why it's their favorite. So who we going with tonight? Which one should we go with? Jaleel, how about yours?
Yeah, I sent one to your email. Do you want me to pull it up? Oh, yep. So this is an illustration from the book Her Stories by Virginia Hamilton. It was created by Leo and Diane Dillon. And this book, it's a book of all of these Black fairy tales and just dope supernatural stories. And this one in particular I just loved mermaids growing up so much, and seeing this Black mermaid as a child, and just how beautiful she was, and reading about the story, how she took this little girl down into the ocean and gave her all types of jewels and food, and just she was gone for so long, and though her family missed her and stuff, just this illustration itself was just so beautiful to me. And it all, like, no matter how far I stray, I always come back to this illustration throughout time, because it has played such a big role in the types of images that I would like to produce. And so eventually I'm gonna get in my mermaid bag, because I just love them. They're so mystical, and I want to see more Black mermaids, you know. But this was the first one that really had a big impact on me.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. It is beautiful.
Yeah.
I saw it. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Drop in the comments for everyone that's watching the actual book and the print and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Leo and Diane Dillon, they are children's book illustrators. They have some beautiful illustrations. I definitely recommend everybody go and check them out. Virginia Hamilton is a wonderful children's author, and her stories has, again, that it's like it's the same way The Wiz, that how The Wiz just, I always come back to The Wiz in my life, whether I'm lost, whether I'm happy, whether I'm sad, you know, I always get back on track once I watch The Wiz or read her stories by Virginia Hamilton. It centers me.
Yeah, there's some things that just bring you back.
Mm-hmm.
Just bring you to a happy place.
Leo, that was a nice segue, sir.
You see what I did there?
I saw you. That was a very nice segue.
That was smooth.
Smooth, real smooth operator.
Shout out as you round out the end of the show here. So the Black Artists Collective, and because we've been talking about Black art and Black joy, and we know that Juneteenth is happening on the 19th. The Black Artists Collective has invited the whole community to a free event at the Inner Harbor here in Syracuse, New York. We will have a pop-up of different Black and brown business owners here in Syracuse, and we have food trucks. And at the end of the evening, we'll have a performance by KJ and Lolo, and we will also have a remembrance of Nikita Slade, and we will also then be showing The Wiz, because we've been locked indoors for the whole year, and now we're ready for some Black joy. And we are inviting people to get dressed up if they want to. You can come as your favorite character. And someone asked me, which one are you showing? We're showing the way back one, the Diana Ross one. So
yeah.
Right. The only one that matters.
Like, what other one is there?
Right. What other one is there? What?
Apparently there was a remake of some point or another.
Yeah, that's how
that one.
You don't touch greatness.
Right.
I don't play about stuff like that.
Exactly. I just want to add that CFAC is also in collaboration and participating at this event. We will have a area set up for painting. And so we've been doing a lot of painting in the park, different dance classes, virtually now we're outside, that sort of thing. And in addition to June, celebrating with the Black Artists Collective for Juneteenth, we also want to invite people to come back because we're open. And so come down and see our latest exhibit featuring Sherilyn Beckles. She has an amazing photo exhibit that focuses on Black women and our hair. And it's shot with digital photography and ultraviolet lighting. So it has this beautiful purple hue. There is a short film also within the gallery. And so we are excited about her work. She'll have an opening reception. I want to say July 8th, but there'll be more information that's posted. And in addition to that, we also continue to have a lot of online exhibitions. Jaleel is featured in it. We just upgraded our online gallery. So it's smooth. It's as smooth as the artists we're featuring.
Okay.
Through. So go to CFAC, cfacgallery.org to see our virtual exhibits, but really come down and see us in person because we miss the community and we want to see you there and experience this wonderful exhibit by Sherilyn Beckles.
Very nice. So why don't you also share, I know Shayla, you shared a little bit on the event that's happening this weekend, but anything else you want to share on your platforms, what you're doing, what's upcoming so that people know?
Absolutely. The Urban Video Project will launch tomorrow evening on the facade of the Everson Museum of Art, a work by Ephraim Asili, an African-American award-winning filmmaker. And the piece is called Fluid Frontiers, and it is shot along the Detroit River. Fluid Frontiers explores the relationship between concepts of resistance and liberation, exemplified by the Underground Railroad and Broadside Press, and artworks of local Detroit artists. So there's a lot of poetry reading from works from the 1970s and 1960s that is integrated into that work that you'll see on the back of the Everson Museum.
Nice.
Awesome.
And of course, Jaleel's gonna shout out his, right?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm working on a music project with my group members, Cjala and Lauren. We are KJ and Lolo, and we're about to bring you all the best house music you've ever heard.
Yeah.
Our project, Smooth Vibrations Volume 1, will be released this summer. We have about 9 or 10 tracks of straight fire featuring local artists here in Syracuse. This is what we've been working on during COVID. It is going to be the remedy. Everything we've needed, you know, in this year of chaos. So get ready to dance, get ready to dance. Jaleel Campbell Studios is open to tour as well. You can book or schedule a visit on my website, jaleelcampbell.com. And doll making workshops will be coming soon.
Nice.
The only last thing that I'll plug, because I'm going to change hats for 1 second, is put on my Black Leadership Coalition hat and remind people that when they come out to our event on Saturday, that there will be Onondaga votes and they can register to vote so that they can participate in the general election in November. Because how artists eat and get paid is through our county and city funding and our federal funding. But in terms of local dollars, showing up at those polls is the way to put dollars into the pockets of our local artists.
Absolutely.
Very nice. Look at that. There's so much going on. It's so dynamic. The art scene is booming.
Right, right.
So a couple of things I want to say. I need some visits. So I'm coming to see you, Tanisha. I know I am. I'm going to come down and I'm going to share. I'm going to share out. That's what I do. And Jaleel, we got to hook up because I need
Listen, what's up?
I need to see a studio, okay? I need to see it and I need to also share that as well.
Yeah.
Finally, with these events, I am moving forward with the Urban Tea SYR platform where we will be able to share all of these lovely things that are happening in a major way. So not only just on social media, but on a website where you can go and get this information. You want to do something that is speaking to you and your community and it is of you. This is where you can go and get that information. So that is coming up soon. Before I let you go, Black art, what does it look like?
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
The future of Black art.
Oh, okay.
What does it look like? Final question, because we're over time.
Oh, that's a difficult one. Wow.
I know.
I think it looks like fun. It looks like joy. It looks like just pride, you know, to again, just to rise from the ashes to as sucky as that has to be, because that's always our damn story. But you know, from that, you are the greatest. So definitely just joy, pride, fun.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
I would just say it looks like us in all the multitude of ways that we show up. I think that's one of the beautiful things is that often communities try to reduce us down to one thing, and art shows that we are a menagerie. We are a diaspora. So I know that the future of art will look like all the different ways in which we show up. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yep. Shayla for president, y'all.
I'm just saying.
I firmly believe that we don't, and I agree with both of you. I think it's joy. I think it's our diversity. I firmly believe that we never are far off from our past, and that we just kind of recreate and reinvent ourselves, but that those cultural nuances, almost like that cellular memory, if you believe in that, or like blood memory, comes up in our work, so that it's a continuation of our lineage, of our hopes, of our dreams, of our culture. And so really the future of Black art is now.
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
I love that.
A better way to end this Black art celebration and culture celebration. I can't thank you enough for sharing your expertise, your perspectives, your thoughts.
Thank
Just
you.
all of who you are and what you do is special to me. And I hope that so many people got a chance to tune in either now or they will later to listen in on this conversation, because it's a critical one. It's such a great conversation to have at a perfect time to be having it as we go into Juneteenth weekend. So thank you so much for being here. If you ever need anything, you know where I'm at, just holler.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia, for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you for providing this platform for the work that we do. So appreciative.
And thank you for everyone who tuned in this evening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Shout
Come
out to
see
you.
us.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely. All right. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.